Scott Fairlamb is a former MMA fighter who was one of the protesters on January 6th. Now, he was, I will have to say, a protester who got into a fight with the police. I'll come to in a moment what he did, but he has just been handed down a sentence, a very severe sentence, 41 months in prison. This is the most severe sentence that has been given to a January 6th defendant. He pleaded guilty to assaulting a police officer. But the question is, what did he do, and in what sense is his penalty proportional to that? I agree that there were some violent protesters. They should be held accountable for it. I'm not arguing that they should get off without penalty. But let's put this in context. We remember Antifa and BLM rioters who did much, much worse and got little to nothing. So justice is a matter of proportionality, equal justice under the law. I should get the same thing as other guys who did the same thing as me under similar circumstances. You remember the opening scene in The Godfather where the undertaker comes to the Godfather and says, "My daughter was abused by these boys." And the Godfather says, "Well, what do you want me to do with them?" And he whispers in his ear, essentially, "I want you to kill them." And then the Godfather, Don Corleone, says, "Well, that's not justice. Your daughter is still alive." And this is the point. In a rough sense, obviously we're dealing here in the movie with criminals, but nevertheless, they have a kind of idea that justice is proportionality. That's its definition. You have to measure the penalty to the wrongdoing. And unfortunately, in America today, when we look around, we don't see much of that. Here's a case I just saw on social media this morning. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, remember the NBA great? Well, his son stabbed another guy with a hunting knife. They got into a big fight, and this is a penalty that carries 7 years in prison. It's essentially inflicting grave bodily injury on somebody else. But because the guy is connected to this basketball player, essentially he obviously had a very good lawyer. What does he get? 6 months. 6 months in jail for essentially a deadly assault, using, in a sense, what's called a dirk or a dagger against someone else. Now, back to Scott Fairlamb and January 6th. When you look at the video, which I've seen, the judge kept talking in the sentencing that he, quote, punched a cop. No, he really didn't. When you look at the video, what you see is that he shoves a cop. It's not obvious who he's even shoving, and he kind of slaps away a face shield. That is all he does. So, I mean, what does this guy do? He shouts a bunch of nonsense, admittedly. He's talking about taking over the Capitol and so on. He carries a police baton that he has on him, but he doesn't wield it or use it at any point. He throws a punch that ends up hitting not an officer, but the officer's face shield. Well, 41 months in prison for that? Is that what a BLM guy would get for doing this? I think we know the answer to that one. Another guy who's coming up for sentencing is the shaman guy. This is Jacob Chansley. And you might remember this is the guy with the ridiculous outfit with the feathers. And let's look what he did. He's essentially there on trespassing charges. No violent offenses, no weapons, no assault. And guess what the Biden administration wants him to serve? They want him to serve 51 months. And this is a guy that you can tell also has some mental problems. So you have a guy who probably was there for the entertainment, is maybe a bit of a kook, but being a kook is not illegal. So he was trespassing in the Capitol. He should get a sentence proportional to that. But the vindictiveness of these people, the viciousness, this is something that is going to be seared into my soul, and I hope into yours, and I hope into the soul of the Republican Party, because these offenses, and what I'm talking about here, are the offenses of the Biden administration, cannot go unanswered, cannot go unpunished. There will be a time when we will have the reins of power, and I think we're going to have to hold these people accountable for their abuses of power.